Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Autonify podcast. We've got Gareth, we've got Alex, we've got myself, James, and we are ready to go. So we've started this new format where we're talking a little bit about what we've learned this week, what we've been up to. Alex, why don't you kick things off?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, James. And you're going to start with me because this was my idea. So that's excellent.
Every week, there's no escape.
So, I mean, as evidenced by the WhatsApp group messages today, I've been playing a lot with operations automation because we make this big claim that we're going to be AI first and blah, blah, blah. But what does that actually mean? So for future product releases, we really want to bring almost back office functions, marketing functions, research functions into our tool set that we can create assistants. So I've done two things. I've been playing a lot with Claude projects and then also in comparison to custom GPTs. And I'm really blown away. I'm not, a long time ago I was technical. I'm definitely lost all those skills, but the ability for both Claude and GPT to allow within those sandboxes to hold context and learn and be taught and then hold on to that is really powerful, like number one. And number two, the bit that I was really, really focusing on today was the ability for those entities then hand off to other things. So can a custom GPT hand off to another custom GPT and you create kind of like a workflow of, research this market, find your persona, write the copy for the persona, then start thinking about the customer journeys. And we also looked into a couple of workflow solutions that might sit in between. So I think it's been a little bit of a, research, playing with tools, 48, 72 hours, but with an eye on to use these things in anger. And it's really cool. It's really interesting. I probably should give a shout out to the couple of the people on YouTube that I've been absolutely crushing over. Skill Leap AI has a really, really nice set of, tutorials, motivational videos, Harrison, they seem to cover the gambit. So Skill Leap AI, thank you very much for cluing me up a little quicker than I would have done it myself.
That's really cool. I mean, what are the early results like, Alex? Like, if you were to compare this to, I don't know, like the traditional way of working, I mean, how much faster, how much more insight? Like, what's the value you're seeing here, I suppose? Like, even if it's early indications.
The really interesting value, and ironically, and this is not intentional, but it does go back to one of our core value propositions, is the ability to create context across all the roles. So traditionally, if I think about, in corporate world, you'd have a squad, and within that, you'd have a bunch of different roles doing different things. And I've kept the roles the same. So that's kind of an interesting existential question in itself. Like, do you need all these roles? But ignoring that for a minute, I've kept the roles the same. And you'd have daily stand-ups or every other day stand-ups. And because we're humans, our context shifts a little bit. So sometimes people will be way out of bounds. Sometimes they'd be bang on. Sometimes, a lot of it comes down to documentation and things like that. Because you can set the context very purely, you don't get any of that kind of shifting. Now, the big negative to that is obviously you lose a level of creativity between the handoffs. So you lose the human creativity and we have to bring that back in. But actually, once you've got the process nailed, the deliverables are exactly kind of theoretically as you want. And I'm saying to Gareth this weekend, I'm going to try and test a proper, everything from persona identification to content creation to journey creation and see, like, actually, does it come out in a way that you want it to, or how much intervention do you have to give it? So it's like, very exact.
That's interesting.
Need to build the creativity back in, I think, is the summary.
So I
guess what you're saying
insights
is go ahead
on
how
Gareth. We would build that creativity back into the flow, because that's what distinguishes these sort of technologies. Having that creativity within the flow is what distinguishes this sort of approach from your off-the-shelf offering that's trying to do this already in the AI market.
Yeah, and this kind of touches on something else that we talked about this week. But if you look at some of the case studies out there of people doing this, the common setup is this isn't replacing anybody. These are assistants within the traditional groupings that you already have. So the content marketers have built a custom GPT for content marketing, but they are overseeing it. So they've got the human creativity always coming back in. So that seems to be the way it's done. Now, obviously, we're pushing that a bit, and we're almost investigating like how much of this can you not have people involved in. So I think that for me, it's a little bit of a suck it and see. It's going to be really interesting to see. The one thing I really like about both Claude projects and Custom GPT is you can upload documents and content to it and instruct it to use that as its guidance before it does anything else. And you can even restrict it to that. So as we're building out a lot of the resources for our own organizations, even things like values, tone of voice, stuff like that, we could actually almost give it a reference point to always come back. So I think that's one of the things I was thinking was what you almost need to build those reference points that it focuses on first to bring in some of those core things that you always want it to focus on.
I guess that's the common thing across all LLM use cases. You need to feed back to the context, and what you're talking about there is effectively your context that you're feeding in to get the answer that you want or the creativity that you want.
Yeah. I think that's right. And I think, that what I'm going to test over the weekend is going to be crazy, crazy simple, but it would still, even the simplest use case will save us an insane amount of time. Like very simple customer journey through a demo flow or something like that. Just having messaging that's correct for the persona that's signed up, like that simple use case is really amazing. And maybe that just frees us up time to be more creative with the next thing that we're thinking about.
It's super exciting to see you so excited about it. And me and James have been like really harping on about the power of it, what it's doing for us from a sort of technology point of view and all the capabilities within that ecosphere. But it's really, really reassuring to hear that, your approach is coming through and you're finding real value in the tooling. I really, really love that.
I think it's fascinating because it's something James and I were talking about. It's like, so where's the secret sauce? Like, if this is all so easy, like, where's your USP as a company? And, it's actually in how you set these things up. Like we've been talking about using these tools and workflows internally to go and find opportunities for things that our software can do that maybe we haven't even thought of. And in that is, it does become the secret sauce, does become the opportunity. I think that's quite exciting. That's sort of the ultimate creativity, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to create these tools and they go and find things that I haven't even thought of that we could actually be really good at. That's pretty cool.
I agree.
Yeah,
I love this idea of, as we go through the company, building these like agents and building AI for ourselves, like we're talking about here, Alex, like go to market, looking at market opportunities, everything. Like, I just love that idea. And it's like, as we go through building the company, we're just going to keep building these things, right? And just looking for opportunities that we can accelerate and do more with less in a way that is something that would have happened in traditional companies too. Like you go into like a Google, you go into a Microsoft, they all talk about these like superstar, hero hires they've made who have like invented like certain technologies or like they've moved the company forward with this one marketing ad or this one initiative that happened, right? It's like these legendary stories. And it's like, actually, instead of making these legendary hires, you're building these like legendary AIs that can go away and do the same effect, right? And that's really interesting. But that's really unique, actually, I think. I'm quite excited about that.
I think so. And it just comes down to like, what's your idea to design them for? That becomes the legendary bit, doesn't it? It's like, what's your, what's your cola ad or your it's a good analogy. It's like, what's that real cut through thing that you stumble across that you build something for? I think that's really cool.
I think we have to
Gareth and I had.
Go on.
No, go on, Gareth.
I was just going to say, you have to like sort of change the way you're thinking about these things because historically everything you follow a certain pattern, organizations have a certain way of doing things. So do you think the fact that we're a startup and has given you a lot of the freedom to be able to go and like think outside the box as opposed to just following the known norm? And using the known norm as like your almost your framework for the outputs that you want. But thinking about it a different way, approaching it a different way.
I think it's interesting. It's turning into a bit of the Alex show, but yeah, it's so that there is an interesting level of institutionalization, I think, that you have to unlearn. there is I think there's two parts to that, right? There's the startup versus large organization, and there is this idea of organizational inertia. And a startup just has less inertia. Like there are less hoops to jump through, there are less people to ask permission for. So that will always be the case. Like a startup will always be able to, and sometimes that's not a good thing because you can make bad decisions, obviously. So, that will always exist. But there's something very different in the context. I penned a really quick LinkedIn post about this. It was like, there is a really interesting question about, even though organizations of a certain size know these tools are good and knows they're useful and know their ability, the organizational inertia is so ingrained now, their ability to actually adopt is really tough. Like there's just so many layers. The matrix is so complicated. There's so many different things going on. Like it doesn't change the fact that, I could build marketing agents, in a corporate world, but it would still take a 3-week sign off to change a web page. Like that's just never going to change. So it is this idea of inertia that I'm sort of fascinated by as we build the companies, we hire more people, like something I really want to be watchful of. But to your original point, Gareth, yeah, like my brain needs to be rewired. I feel like I'm on a daily process of it, not letting that matrix or inertia kind of be a reason not to do things.
So I was going to change the topic a little bit. So I guess I'll summarize for both of us, Gareth. I think we had a nightmare and then a revolution this week in probably 48 hours or so, right? So we had some code that was badly architectured, probably from myself. And that led to a big rabbit hole in the platform, which Gareth realized and picked up and identified a solution. But then we realized that solution was basically going to span across the whole application. And honestly, I think if we didn't have AI in the mix, that probably would have taken us the best part of a week of really hard grinding, maybe longer, both of us, like grinding it out for 12, 13 hours a day, right? Just literally going through files, finding, fixing, beating. And we went through on Claude Code. We told it what to do. Gareth put together a really comprehensive prompt. It was like maybe like 100 lines long of like different examples and what to do in that scenario. And we let it go for about 3 or 4 hours, Gareth, and then it came back, it fixed everything. There was still some tidying up to do at the end, but oh my God, that was amazing. And the funny thing is that it kept pausing every like 30 or 40 minutes, and it would say, oh, I've got this far now, shall I continue? And it feels laborious, but you got to type in, yes, please keep going. It was amazing, right? Like that's just so fantastic to have that kind of helper there just doing that, because that would have just been mind-numbingly boring and tedious and painful, right? I think we would have come on this podcast crying, probably.
Is that the first time that's happened to that extent? I mean, was this testing the boundaries of the solution a little bit?
That's the biggest change I've ever made.
Really?
From a file perspective, there was like 300 files changed, which is like ginormous, but it wasn't like revolutionary changes. It was just very rinse and repeat, I guess, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And now James is definitely going to tell me to, switch to Claude Code. I don't think I've got an argument against it, because I'm like, well, I mean, I was hanging in on the cursor camp, but maybe I do need to try out Claude Code, because it was impressive. As James said, we did have quite a bit of tidy up, but it was like manageable. And before that, it was a bit nervous. We always knew we needed to do it. We just didn't know we would have such a good tool to help us do it. So we've put it off for a fair while because of the extent. I always knew the extent was going to be quite a lot. But then we hit Claude Code with it, and what a job it did to get us 90% of the way there. It just blew me away, to be honest. And I was a bit speechless.
How do you know?
I wish we'd left it on purpose so we could come in here and be like, yeah, we knew the AI would be able to do it in a few months' time as the technology advanced.
I guess also, like, it is worth mentioning, when we started coding this, we were using 3.5, right? Claude Sonnet 3.5, and the LLMs nowadays are just so much better at understanding patterns and understanding implementation and things like that. So the newer stuff we've done doesn't suffer from this because we've used the newer models, but the older stuff, when we first sort of started building out the platform, that's where the issue was. So it's not James said I'm going to blame him, but I don't blame him at all. You know, we were rapidly prototyping and things like that to see what we could do, and it was just a victim of that prototyping. But it is reassuring that even if you have these huge technical debt sort of pile-ups, you can, you know, with the right tools, get them fixed up pretty quickly.
How do you know it's done it? Like that is a basic question. Like, did
Well,
you?
I actually I put something in the code which would break until it was fixed. So I effectively trapped it and gave it a command to run that would always error unless everything was sorted. And that was a good test for the LLM because the LLM could run that, see that something was broken, apply the new fix to the new workflow. You can't if you don't have that gate, it becomes more difficult. But that was just part of the engineering bit that we had to do to figure out how we were going to give it bit to Claude Code and get a result that we wanted. So with those explicit sort of prompting.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like we're kind of figuring out, just like talking about you, Alex, where you were saying you're figuring out these workflows and like the context and the best way to trigger these things. We're almost doing the same thing. You know, what's the best way to use these tools so you get the best results? And that's super interesting. Like for us, it's, you know, going in with a really good prompt to begin with that had the requirements really well spelled out. It was having some of these tests that Gareth's talking about in there as well, so we could prove the results and, you know, everything from it. And that's just, you know, learn from experience, because the naive approach would be just go in and say, my code's not working, this is the problem, go and fix it. But actually the combination of the LLM plus our insight plus the domain knowledge to build that prompt of exactly what to do, that's why we were able to get the result right. It wouldn't have come back with that result otherwise, I think.
Yeah, it's probably it's a good best practice hint, isn't it? It's like, make sure you know that it's fixed it. Like, have something in there that always gives a positive outcome.
And I mean, the other side of this is that, you know, if it wasn't for, I say, our domain expertise, Gareth's domain expertise in Next.js and the stack, you know, these things wouldn't get fixed, right? Like you would just move along. And that's the danger of, you know, this whole vibe coding in the hands of engineers who don't know the stack, don't know the technology, is that you leave loads of inefficiency, security vulnerabilities, and just bad code hygiene in there, right? That's the difference,
And that's
I suppose, isn't it?
littered all over LinkedIn, isn't it? You'll see post after post of, you know, people have had really good traction and built a startup or a SaaS product, and then all of a sudden you ask it to make one change and it starts breaking everything else. Just because fundamentally you need to understand how the actual underlying framework works to be able to effectively do it. And that can happen across everything. If you're using AI to generate agents so you don't understand how LangGraph works, then that's going to be a problem. Front end, it's going to be a problem. If you're writing APIs, you don't understand how API security works, you're going to have problems. I think even though these tools give us a lot out of the box, you do have to rely on domain knowledge. I mean, it's a great opportunity for people to learn as well. It would be great if there was a platform out there that gave you the, you know, these are the things you need to look out for when you're building these sort of products. Right?
I'm sure it will come.
It will come, yeah.
That's going to exist. Guys, we're running out of time here.
Yes.
Go on, Alex.
I had lunch with a friend yesterday who's building a education platform that will ingest content and create courses and curricula using AI agents for companies. And it is that, you know, it is absolutely that type of thing that's going to come next. A bit like me trawling YouTube channels, right? Training is probably the next thing that we all need.
Yeah, I agree. All right, good. Short one today, guys, but thank you so much for your time. Thanks to the listeners, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you.